Yes, she's a very good speaker.
Today's subject is permissiveness. We all agree, I think, that it's getting too much. I mean, you look about you today and all you see is nudity and filth. There is a rising tide of filth that is going to swamp us. All our precious values are being spat on by filth merchants. Films, television, books, even, I read the other day, the opera. It is a swamp of iniquity, and it is going to drag us down unless we, as mothers, do something about it. I mean, you can't turn on your television set these days and remain decent. How can you take your kids to the pictures? You've got to avert your eyes from every poster you see. It's shameful. And I'm not having my son taught in school about penises and vaginas by long-haired perverts. It's all a conspiracy, that's all it is, to drag us down into the swamp. Call themselves intellectuals. Anyway, we have someone here today who is much better equipped than I am to talk to you about this. He's a man whom you've been hearing rather a lot about lately. He is a good man who is fighting for decency. Ladies, allow me to introduce...
Not my area of investigation.
It's your area.
Moral pollution?
That's right.
Oh, give me something in the air, on the ground, under the ground. Can you hear it? Can you see it? Can you touch it? Is it destroying us? And I'll do it.
You can see it. You can touch it. Ooh. You can even smell it.
Oh, not that. You know what I mean.
It's destroying us.
That's a highly emotive, rabble-rousing slogan, with respect, Minister.
Political dynamite.
Exactly.
I never use it. Never once in my political career have I appealed to a constituent's base instincts for survival.
What's Doomwatch supposed to do? Report on the moral condition of the people? Analyze the significance or otherwise of trends towards the corruption of youth through permissive attitudes expressed in the arts, medicine, and literature towards sex and violence. Are you serious? Doomwatch?
Quest, what is the difference between pollution of the air and pollution of the mind?
There's a vast detectable difference.
Then say so.
Oh, I see. Dawn breaks. Political expediency.
Nonsense.
The pressure on the government to change the laws on obscenity would mean too much money, effort, more policemen, possibly even a new ministry. And, of course, there's no election coming up to make political capital out of it, so Doomwatch is asked to get out a report which is already a foregone conclusion.
Foregone conclusion?
That changing the law would send everything underground as it did the tarts.
West, I'm a mite shocked that you are about to enter an inquiry with foregone conclusion.
Yes, I want to take that one back.
No, don't take it back. I'd like it to hang around for a while.
But I'm right. This massive lobby from the church, from every self-appointed organisation under the sun, from politicians who haven't had their names in print since the Dark Ages.
And from some trade unions, too.
Has already given rise to the Purvis Committee.
And from a great many honest, ordinary people. You see, this is like hanging. Now, you can't say that's unpopular.
But the Purvis Committee...
Which I'd like you to sit in on sometimes.
Isn't enough. You want Doomwatch to say that whatever comes out of the Purvis report...
You'll find all statistics there.
Nothing should be changed. A rubber stamp?
Oh, don't be so old-fashioned. You really are getting extraordinarily ratty over this.
That's right. I don't want any part of it.
Not even with Dr. Tarrant appointed to the committee.
What?
She'll keep your seat warm for you, Spencer.
Established by Her Majesty's government into the extent of what we will call the corruption of morals by the media. It is on the surface a sensational brief, and it will be my job on this particular subcommittee, indeed on all the committees, to try and restrict our deliberation to the context of facts. I know how difficult it is not to be emotional about this subject. I won't stop you from voicing an opinion, but I must come in if we start breaking down into personal antipathy. Facts. I have them here. Reports. The Commission of Obscenity and Pornography That is from America.
Ah, but that found against any change in the law. We mustn't pay too much attention.
We can never pay too much attention. Our problem will be to pay enough. Reports from Sweden, Denmark, indeed, analyses of laws in every country, East and West, and their effectuality. I would ask you to welcome Dr. Tarrant, lately co-opted to our committee. Dr. Tarrant, the members of the subcommittee on obscenity and pornography are the Reverend Charles Garrison.
How do you do?
Hello.
Professor Fairburn.
Hello.
Mrs. Angela Cressy.
How do you do?
Mr. Stephen Granger.
Hello.
And Dick Burns, who needs no introduction from me.
How do you do, Doctor?
Hello.
Ladies and gentlemen, there is an onus on this subcommittee to read and hear views, opinions, surveys, reports, and to take established facts, not presumed facts, and to reach a conclusion. If you come to the conclusion that a change in the law is necessary, you will so conclude. I will take that recommendation to the main committee, and it will become, when and if it is confirmed, the basis of my report to the minister. If you decide not, so be that too. Of course, it will be a matter for the government then, in the usual democratic fashion, to come to its own decision, and they may or may not take your point of view. But whatever happens, yours will be a weighty decision. Very well. I would bring your attention, first of all, to the report of the Joint Committee on Censorship of the Theatre.
Oh, excuse me, Mr. Burns.
Yes?
Could I have your autograph, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. I have a friend waiting
Oh,
up.
come on. I know I'm an old woman, but you're never too busy to scribble your name on an autograph book, are you? Please, just sign for me, will you?
Oh, all right then.
I've left my bag over here. Just a minute. Please, think what you're doing.
What?
I said think what you're doing.
What are you talking about?
I'm a mother of a young family. It's my children that are at stake, my kids.
Huh?
Decency! I want them to grow up to be decent.
Well, that's fine. You can let go of my sleeve now.
Oh, I'm sorry. You see, it's your vote that's important
What vote?
on this subcommittee. I mean, it's up to the crowd in this committee whether there's a change in the law. Is that right?
Yes, that's right.
Well, it's your vote that'll do it. I mean, Tarrant and Fairburn and Granger, they're the opposition. I mean, they'll let society run mad. They'll have sex and violence and nudity on the box, on the posters, everywhere. They'll say it's good for us. Mrs. Cressy and Charles Garrison want decency. And if it comes to a vote, Lord Purvis will be on their side. That leaves you with the casting vote.
Well, so what?
So what? You've got to vote with Cressy and Garrison, that's what. I mean, you're not with the underground or the hippies, are you?
You are a comic, aren't you?
There is nothing comical about my kids' futures, Sonny. The mothers of this country will take the law into their own hands if there isn't a change. There'll be blood if there isn't a change.
Who says so?
Never mind who says so, I say so.
Look, I'm sorry, but I've got better things to do.
Don't you forget what I told you. You vote for decency.
You get a wash. Why don't you go home and wash?
And get an estimate while you're about
Look,
it.
my hair's got nothing to do with this play.
You think they should appear naked, men and women together on a public stage, doing what they're doing?
Well, why not? You don't have to go and watch.
You'd have it done out here, wouldn't you, on the street for our kids to watch?
Well, maybe that'd be better than seeing their old men come home at night boozed up and rape their mums.
Don't start your filthy talk with me.
Look, why don't you buy a seat? It'll be the first bit of sex education you've ever had, I'll bet.
Wash your mouth out.
You've got an obsession with washing. Why don't you start a laundrette?
Are you going into the theatre?
Yes.
Why?
Buy a ticket to see the play.
I'm picketing.
I don't care what you're doing. Would you kindly let me pass?
Look, just by going in and buying a ticket, you're supporting this filth, you know.
I don't know anything of the kind. Now, will you please...
Have you got any kids?
I have a 6-year-old daughter, if it is any business of
Well, you ought
yours.
to be bloody ashamed of yourself. You've got to clean it all up, don't you understand?
You let me through.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Get through.
Don't you push me! She pushed me! All right, I'll push you! Filthy freaks! I need to see a play like this!
Hasn't everyone got beautiful eyes?
Shh, don't talk.
Doesn't hurt at all. Your eyes are beautiful. I was looking at her mouth. It was twisted and ugly. I suppose it was the words that were ugly.
There were no arrests. She got away, but we'll find her.
We can talk and talk on that committee. We can read reports till our eyes run. We'll never get anywhere till we can understand the mind of a woman like that.
And we'll find her.
I'd like to find her. Not to have her arrested. Just to find out why she did it.
Do you really want to be on this committee?
Yes.
You're staying on?
Yes, after this.
All right. If that's the way you feel, we'll find her for you. Until this moment, I don't really know how I felt. Political games. Words like decadence, morality, pollution. But now I can feel it, see it. You can give us a full report on the committee, and we'll find her for you.
No charges.
Oh, I know. It's science. What does she look like? 5'1", reddish hair, shoulder length, small clip holding it back. Startled eyes, sharp chin.
A witch?
Thin build, wearing a blue mac, aged 30 years.
It's not my job.
What?
It's not my job. It's routine police work, this. Little woman gets angry at theatre showing obscene act. It's common assault.
How do you know the play was obscene?
Well, I read about it. It's common assault. It's not my job. What's Doomwatch doing fiddling about with this for anyway? I know your attitude to pornography before we start.
Oh, do you? I don't remember ever having discussed it with you. What is my attitude?
You're a liberal.
Is that so? Well, well.
I'd stop that play.
With your fists or with a gun?
With the law.
Ooh, legal fists, legal guns.
That's right.
Find that woman, will you, Neil?
Incidentally, I've got another description. Not the same woman. Someone tried to nobble a member of the committee, the pop singer bloke. He rang the yard.
What was she after, this woman?
Trying to swing his vote to the ban it all mob.
Find her, too.
Wayward girls, orgies,
Oh, really?
wife-swapping
No need to go through
orgies,
that.
vice dens, prostitution, homosexuality, transvestism, frigidity, nymphomania, and lesbianism. These are the themes dealt with in the American cinema. It's all here in this report. Do we want that here?
It's out of context, I'm afraid, madam. These are exploitation films. They're known in the trade as skin flicks. And they show in club cinemas in this country, as we've seen in our study of the literature handed out by these cinemas.
But do we want them here?
Well, we may not want them, but they're obviously in demand. Well, according to the profits these club cinema gentlemen declare.
Yes, but do we all agree that they should exist?
You mean, are they corrupting the people who see them?
I do.
Rubbish. Of course they aren't. Pornography is the manifestation of the fantasies of the sexual infant. Every man passes through the fantasy stage. Infant sexuality, let me remind you, the baby is a sexual being. But at what age do we recognize sexuality? It rears its hideous head at something like the age of 10 or 11, and we stumble and mumble and object to sex education in the schools. No, the people who go to see these films are the sexually ignorant, the sexually deprived. The ones whose knowledge of sex behavior was truncated as soon as they placed an innocent hand on their genitals.
Please, don't try to shock me. I trust I'm not easily shockable.
I'm sorry, Mrs. Cressy, but we must conduct our research by calling things by their proper names.
No, they go to find out. Now, isn't that sad? At the age of 60 or 70 sometimes they go to a cinema to find out.
You'd have these films shown to a mass public?
No, I'd leave it the way it is.
There are some people who make a lot of money out of ignorant people.
Yes, you've hit it, Mr. Burns. A lot of people do make a lot of money out of other people's ignorance, but then when was that a crime in our society? Advertisers do it. I mean, educated people would laugh half the advertisements off television.
Medical men do it. They make profits out of the simple ignorance of sick people.
Now, you're talking about the private practitioner.
I'm talking about the mystique of medicine.
What do you think, Mr. Burns? Do you think these films should be shown at all?
Well, I don't know, do I? I haven't seen any of them.
Then we must arrange a showing of one of these films. We'll also take in some legitimate cinema going. And we'll take a trip to the Blue Film Library at Scotland Yard.
Great.
Mrs. Hastings,
Yes.
on the 1st of March, were you outside the Princess Theatre on Sackford Street?
Are you the police?
More than that.
Well, Mr. Burns, what do you think about that?
I can't believe it. It's ridiculous.
Do you feel contaminated?
Me? I think I'd laugh if it wasn't so sad. I mean, it's impossible.
Oh, my God. Mrs. Hastings, could we talk? Thank you.
Would you like a cup of tea?
Oh, yes, thank you. That would be very nice.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't know what to do. I'm so sorry for what I've done. I've never done anything like that before. I swear I've never done anything like that in my life before. Can I say, I touch you. I haven't slept. For God's sake, forgive me.
Of course, I forgive you.
I'll do anything to make it up to you. Anything at all, anything.
There is something.
Well, what? I'll do anything. Would you like a biscuit?
Oh, no, thank you. I've only come here for one reason. To find out why you did it. I'm a psychiatrist, Mrs. Hastings. I was co-opted to a government committee that's looking into the whole question of obscenity, pornography and violence. And I was sent along to see that play at the Princess Theatre. They'd asked me to report on it.
Oh, God, if I'd known that.
You were going to say that if you'd known that, you wouldn't have attacked me.
Well, yes.
That means you'd still feel justified in attacking me if I'd merely been going to see the play for my own pleasure.
Oh, no, I don't.
I want to know why, Mrs. Hastings. That's why I'm here. Not to prefer charges. To ask you for your cooperation. You can be my report.
Well, I'd do anything.
Then tell me why.
I'll try. I want to know myself. Do you believe I'm a peaceful person? I'm not like that. That's not my picture. I've got a boy of 9. We live here by ourselves. My husband left me. We didn't have a very good marriage. He's been gone about 2 years now. When I go out to work, he sends me a bit. It's another thing. I haven't been to work since this happened. God knows where the money's coming from this week. I was lonely. I was so lonely here. I can't get out. Only for a little while. I'm losing control of Paul. They say he's turned into a right little turnaway. Anyway, I went along to a meeting of this group.
What group?
It's just called Housewife. It's mainly for working mothers who can't get out. Most of them are a bit older than me, but some are about my age, and, well, we have a bit of fun together. Meeting in the mornings, having a cup of coffee, chewing things over. Having a bit of a giggle sometimes.
How long have you belonged to this group?
About a year.
Do you know a Mrs. Catchpole?
She's the London organiser.
It's got branches all over the country.
We have monthly meetings at the Fairhill Hall. They get speakers down. They're not keen on women's lib. They don't like that. The thing I got interested in was the Clean Up campaign. It made sense, see? Answered all sorts of questions for me. Mainly to do with why Paul's like he is. I started wearing a button. Anyway, at this meeting, Mrs. Catchpole asked us to do something about this awful play.
I went along to see it. It was awful. But I don't think in the same way that you mean. Oh, go on.
When I got there, the place was packed. Everyone was going in to see this awful play. We were outnumbered. Mrs. Catchpole said that all crusades start like that. She said the time had come for action, that decent people couldn't just stand by. We had to take up arms.
She said take up arms?
Sort of religious talk. Well, I just stood there and I saw those awful people going in to watch people doing it on the stage. They were laughing. I just thought of all she'd said about values, and suddenly I knew what values meant. They were like beasts, like animals, perverts. I can't remember the rest. Did I hurt you very much?
I want to know why, Mrs. Hastings.
Don't laugh at us, Mr. Granger. We who use the word disgusting.
I didn't, madam.
Oh, yes, you did, Mr. Granger.
This is an age when we are seeing established values destroyed piecemeal. You wake up one morning and something you thought yesterday was sensible, obvious, pure, is being molested.
And it's this area where the attack is concentrated. Ideas of family, ideas of love, of chastity. There's an out-of-date word, eh? Well, I don't think it is.
No, nor do I.
What about you, Mr. Burns? Chastity. Out of date?
No, not at all.
Look, I thought we were dealing with facts, and you're talking about ideas. Ideas of family? What about the hypocrisy of family? That's the fact that young rebels nowadays are talking about. Ideas of love? What about our love for a North Vietnamese child with bits of an American shatter bomb in his guts?
Mr. Granger, I don't
Look,
think
it seems to be our brief to link sex and violence, and you're talking about love ideals. Well, I'm talking about love ideals too, but I would like to submit this as a fact. When a child is born, it has a great capacity for love. Love is endemic to its nature, like sex. It loves everyone, it loves everything. But we teach it that only a few things are worthy of being loved. We teach it hate, and what is worse, we teach it certainty. Absolute, right and wrong, good and bad. Now, there are only two certainties: life and death, and all the rest are changeable. You see, we're living in a period of great change, Mrs. Cressy, and this is what I don't think you can understand. I mean, the old absolutes taught at home and in the classrooms, Queen, country, God, the divine right of capitalism, family, love and chastity, they're no longer absolutes. What we should be giving our children is the certainty about themselves, their personality, their identity, their independence.
Maybe we should give a child the courage to confront all the challenges.
Yeah.
Now, why should contact with pornography mean corruption? See, only by permitting the human being all the varieties of experience can we give him the opportunity to create a set of values, and we must respect his ability to create decent values.
Yes, but the trouble is, my friend, that evil men, as Mr. Burns has said, are stepping in to make capital out of it.
Oh, yes, you're right. I'm with you there. But it is our divine society that allows them to do it. It makes profit a god. And that's being challenged, too.
Then we must make it illegal for them to publish things like this.
You haven't got my point. And I don't think you ever will.
Injurious to public morals by tending to corrupt the mind and destroy the love of decency, morality and good order. Whose love of decency, Doctor? Whose mine?
That's what we hope to find out. Oh, Barbara. Where is Dr. Tarrant's latest shipment?
Here, Doctor. With the compliments of the committee.
Oh.
And Dr. Tarrant says there's 100 weight more where this came from.
So we put this lot in. I ask a simple question like, is long hair scandalous? I program the word scandalous. Now, what attitude do I ask the computer to take to the word scandalous?
We have here statistics on the reported increase of rapes in America. The reported decrease of rapes since the law was changed in Denmark. We have here a survey on the exposure to sexually oriented materials among young male prison offenders in America. An analysis of sex stimulus. Here, the extent of nudity thought to be acceptable. Emotional responses to erotica, guilt levels, etc.
Morality judgment, that's what I'm asked to give you. Doctor, a computer is not a lot of things. You do understand that. It's not good or bad, moral or immoral. It's not judge or jury. Morals are not a question of mathematics.
Yes, Fred, I do understand that. But what we want is the answer to the question. Would a change in the law reduce the danger of contamination, A, to children, and B, to adults.
You'd need to program every human being in the UK into that machine in order to do that properly.
National characteristics?
Am I to do this job properly or not?
As properly as you can.
With respect, Doctor, there is properly and there is not properly. In my book, there is no such degree as properly as you can.
Yes, Brad, I do know. And you and I were going to have a little drink later and weep on each other's shoulders about it.
May I come? I feel like a weep, too.
Housewife has about 6,000 members throughout the UK. It's been involved in 4 different fracas this week. One at the Tate Gallery.
Oh, yeah, the Bengler exhibition.
Trying to force their way into the offices of Northern Television.
They're hitting the headlines every day.
Do you want me to see this woman catch pole?
Yes. Who's the money behind all this? I mean, who pays for the fairs, the halls, the posters?
Ballantyne.
What this meeting ignores is the extent of the corruption of children through the media.
Yeah. Don't let that man get on the platform.
Change the law. Make obscenity illegal. Bring more prosecutions.
Will you please get off the platform?
Get rid of filth and depravity. We've had enough of it. Banish it from our lives.
We'll have to remove you if you don't leave, sir.
Will you leave the platform?
Perverts and subversives are behind it all. Can't you see? Are you blind?
Pull him off the platform.
These beasts are polluting the minds of our children, but our rulers don't care.
Will someone get that idiot out of the hole? Come on, sir. You know what you're sort here?
Let us raise ourselves from the gutter. I'm for the rule of law. What's happened to the law?
How are you going, sir? You're going on your arse.
We want decency, not decadence. In the name of our children, let's raise the banner of decency. Change the law.
I was never told a thing about sex. Not the way it really happens.
Would you try not to grip the sides of the chair? Relax. Just relax and talk about it as it really was.
Well, it was strange men who might touch me. It was be careful of the boys. One day one did. Put his hand up. I remember thinking, now that is clear. I remember thinking, do you remember when you thought of things? I remember thinking, shall I let him touch? No, I love my parents. I want them to love me. I'll let them down if I let him. First time I let a boy do it properly, it was disgusting.
Why?
Well, we didn't know what to do. It was shameful.
Shameful at the time or afterwards?
Both.
Who told you it was disgusting?
Some girl at school said it was marvellous. That's why I did it. My parents were right. It was disgusting.
Your parents told you it was disgusting?
Oh, no, they never mentioned it.
Why did you say they did?
I didn't.
You said my parents were right. It was disgusting.
I don't know why I said that. They never talked about it.
Your parents brought you up to be a good girl?
They thought they did. I was a thief at school. I used to steal things. They never found out.
If they had found out, would they have thought that was disgusting?
Oh, no. Wrong. Bad. They wouldn't have been disgusted.
What do you mean by disgust?
Well, when it's... Ugh.
What else is disgusting?
I don't know.
Excrement?
Hmm? Oh, yeah.
Your mother having a baby? Try to answer.
I can't. You're making me cry.
Then cry.
No, I'm not going to cry. What are you trying to make me say? What are you up to?
She walked out. Her cooperation stopped there. What had I asked her to do? I had asked her to imagine, well, several things. Her mother and father copulating, possibly indulging in some practice which she would regard as perverted.
Why should you? That's what I want to know. Why should you ask her these things?
Why?
Because Dr. Tarrant is a psychiatrist, Mrs. Cressy.
Her parents had severed all connection between their own sexual experience and their child, as most parents do. The simulated intercourse on the stage at the Princess Theatre, although she hadn't even witnessed it, was the exposure of a suspected obscene act by her parents.
I saw it, and it was an obscene act. And I've no sex hang-ups about my parents' sexual habits.
What about oral sex?
What? Oh, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Granger. Well, Mr. Garrison introduced his parents. I didn't.
It was Freud who made it clear that sexuality and procreation are not the same thing. The sexual instinct is deeply rooted in the biological basis of our organism. Now, Wilhelm Reich, the eminent psychoanalyst, extended the Freudian concept by showing that the sexual instinct is deeply rooted in all our living functions. He called it biological energy, the fountain of our being. He said if you repress this energy, you produced a stunted person. Now, Mrs. X is that kind of person. She is maladjusted in a way that we haven't begun to understand. In law, in religion, in politics, in education, even in science.
I believe Reich was expelled from the International Psychoanalytical Association.
Of course he was. Mrs. X, you know, is not unusual. She is what you would call, Mrs. Cressy, a very decent person. She is what you would call ordinary. And she is intelligent. But she has read so many violent headlines about depravity, drugs, obscenity, filth and disease that she has committed her first violent act. I want to make the strongest possible recommendation to this committee that if the law is changed to bring penal sanctions into effect, instead of some kind of therapy and education program, in fact, a recognition of her sexuality, we shall have swept the problem right under the carpet and perpetuated it.
Are you suggesting that I am stunted, Dr. Tarrant? Or Mr. Garrison here?
We have inquired extensively over these last few weeks into the representation in our media of elements of a pornographic and obscene nature. We've heard from filmmakers, television and radio people, psychologists, societies who want to change the law. We have read reports on the effects of such material on children, on controls of different kinds. We must now turn our attention to the subject of violence.
Doomwatch?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, it's about time the government sat up and paid some attention. We've been on to them long enough. Maybe now we can start getting some sanity back into life. We're sick of nudes. See through this, see through that, disgusting pictures and films. Our children turn into little perverts by dirty, long-haired anarchists and communists. It's an attempt to tear society down. Back to the jungle, that's where they want us, so the Reds can take over. You know the Reds are behind it. It all comes from Moscow, you know that as well as I do. You know who I think is public enemy number one? The Archbishop of Canterbury. Yes, you can laugh. You look at all his speeches. Every time he opens his mouth, it's to come to the aid of some black. Look what he said about Rhodesia in South Africa. No concern for the whites, only the blacks. You should see the blacks in this neighbourhood. You stay around here for a while and watch them. You never saw such disgusting behaviour in all your life. They'll pack them all off. Well, glad that the government is going to take some action. Though personally, I believe they're weak, the lot of them. Tories, Labour, Liberal. It needs a strong man to do something, who's not intimidated by Reds and long-haired intellectuals, or a government of businessmen. They'd soon put a stop to these demonstrations and strikes, orgies and dropouts. A government of businessmen with a strong man at the helm, that's my opinion. What was it you wanted to ask me?
It's in this area of violence that I think we can be more specific. In pornography, it's my view that the adolescent is no innocent. And it's an onus on the artist and the writer and the program maker not to conceal. Now, in violence, the onus is much more evident. I don't think violence should be concealed from the child, but I do think it should be treated honestly and with great care. Not only lest the child should imitate, I'm not only concerned with that, but more important, so that he should know the real nature of violence, so that he can understand it and combat it, for he will most certainly meet it.
Well, we've read and seen a great deal about television drama, family viewing, childhood and society, and the effects of mass communication. I want to see less violence.
Couldn't we make a film? A violent film? After all, there hasn't been a conclusive study on the effects of violence viewed by children. Couldn't we make one? Surely there's a grant for these purposes, isn't there?
Yes, there certainly is.
If we made a violent film with actors and a director and a special script and everything, and sat some children in front of it and watched them, and noted their reactions afterwards. That would be very helpful.
If you'll excuse me, what sort of film? I mean, what would you show them? At the moment, we've got all kinds of violence. Shootings, cowboys. Sometimes we show them in pain, other times we don't give a damn about them. And what type of film?
And what sort of controls? I mean, healthy children, mentally maladjusted children, deprived children? You'd need years to study them.
And what about the violent word? The violent personality? Sometimes that's more frightening. A voice raised in anger doesn't necessarily have any less effect than a killing.
We've glamorized violence on the screen so much it's become respectable. See, war films and cowboy films, gangster films, they're all respectable. But are we to say they're all right because these filmmakers kill men bloodlessly? I mean, are we to indict the man who shows the brutal boot in the stomach while we sanction the exciting massacre of 100 Indians?
Thank you. Already. This film we've been asked to see, ladies and gentlemen, was shown on television late at night in September 1971. It's rather gruesome, and the point the questioner makes when he asks us to view it is, should it have been shown? Thank you.
Lagos Beach, but the holiday crowds are there to watch the day's executions. This is one of the most recent, and to date, those crowds have seen about 75 Nigerians being shot. Sightseers trying to reach the executions have caused some of Nigeria's biggest ever traffic jams. Today, 8 men have been prepared for execution. These include 7 members of a hold-up gang that got away with £11,000 last March. Men are shot for less important crimes. A man who, armed with a club, robbed a taxi driver of £14 was also shot. The public gallery was full.
I came to Nigeria because I studied for my family and for my nation, but not knowing that I could not help my nation. Oh God, you know the best. You know the best. And thy will shall be done. Thy will has to be done. My spirit shall prevail on my enemies who have conspired to take away my life at this stage.
A word from the priest, the last word in an almost mundane spectacle.
Should never have been shown.
Why not?
It's revolting.
Yes, it is revolting. What do you think, Mr. Garrison?
Well, it is very alarming.
Mr. Burns?
It's terrible.
What do you think?
It's horrible. Those are people.
It is a documentary film.
I don't care what you call it. Those are people.
How do you feel, Mr. Burns?
How can they do that to people?
You see?
No, I don't see. Mr. Burns is nauseating.
I must remind you that Mr. Burns is not a control.
Oh, we're all control. Surely it's our reactions thereafter.
Only to whether this film should have been shown. Not to the political and domestic situation inside Nigeria.
It just makes me bloody angry, that's all.
Angry why?
At its being shown, Mr. Burns?
No, I mean, those are people. They died right in front of our eyes. Yes. I mean, I just wanted to go out there and do something about it, that's all. And explain and stop it.
What do you want your daughter to see? She's a healthy, inquiring female, age 6. What do you want her to see?
Everything.
Stafford doesn't. He wants his boy to be decently exposed, whatever that means. He'd rather send his son to a brothel at the age of 16.
Well, it takes all sorts. What is that book?
The Function of the Orgasm by Wilhelm Reich.
Oh.
Are we all sick?
We are?
Me too.
Of course.
I don't know how you can bear me in your presence. I have a question niggling at me. What's Doomwatch doing in this mess? How is the future of humanity being threatened? I still can't get to terms with my brief. Bradley's putting it all into the computer and getting the same answer. What the hell's the official meaning of words like decency, depravity, corruption?
What's the meaning of the word official?
Oh, I'm an official.
Oh, you're the meaning of the word official. Are you going to go on reading that book all night?
Well, Reich knew the answers. He understood the real menace of this obsession with the word permissive. No man could ever be dominated by another man or another power if he was a whole man. But you can do what you like with anyone. If in his infancy and childhood you take his sex urges away or twist them or obscure them, then as a man he can be made to be ashamed, and you can mold him like putty.
The Conservative Party conference at Brighton today was interrupted by a demonstration that held up proceedings for several minutes. A man climbed onto the platform and shouted, "What are you doing about the permissive society?" He was hustled off by stewards. Later on, the subject under discussion, unemployment, produced an impassioned plea from Mrs. Roberta Baker, who asked for more attention.
But just what is it you know about me, Quist?
Educated Eton and Balliol.
A poor scholar, I'm afraid.
Inherited father's estates. Extreme right-wing politically.
Very extreme.
Stood for Parliament 6 times, amassed a total of 722 votes.
You kept your nose in the books. Even I hadn't worked that out.
Independent Front candidate, British candidate, National Flag candidate.
As each organization became defunct, we're always throwing up new organizations.
I like throwing up.
Oh, let's talk without that kind of emotion, shall we, Quist?
You finance a number of organizations, 2 or 3 violent ones.
Violent? I would have used the word irate.
Including Housewife and the Campaign for Clean Literature, both of which have had members in the courts in recent weeks.
Well, they were lively, indignant. They wanted change. Of course they finished up in court.
And you're putting money into that offense?
Naturally. Excuse the state of the lawn. I have put down chalk.
Do you know Mrs. Catchpole?
Yes, she's one of the organizers of Housewife.
And do you know Mrs. Hastings?
No, she.
Do you know that Mrs. Catchpole is a very violent woman?
Irate.
And that she's involving innocent people in a savage campaign to clean up the arts?
Are they innocent people? They're angry, Dr. Quist. Angry.
What are you trying to do?
I'm a political opportunist, Dr. Quist, and I say that without pulling any punches. How many politicians whom you know to be political opportunists would admit to it?
Very few. Can I quote you?
Certainly. My honesty will enhance my electoral prospects.
Then I won't quote you.
Why am I on this sex kick? Is that your question? Let me show you my apple trees. As if you're very careful in your selection, you can have a supply of apples right through from July until September.
Go on.
Well, I'm an amateur student of the mind, sir. And naturally, being a politician, I talk about the mind of a nation. Well, in that mind, there's a longing for freedom and an actual fear of freedom, particularly about sex, which is so vital to us. So anyone who brings in a law which will protect us from naked bodies and explicit references is bound to be popular. He'll put a legal lid on all our guilty pots. It's therefore important that on the way I should be seen to lead a campaign against the sex freedoms. It's a mere political maneuver.
That is the most cynical statement I've ever heard.
I would have hoped to hear the word honest. Politicians have been doing it for years. Whenever there's a moral issue to be legislated upon, they pander to our fear and guilt instead of alleviating it. Indeed, to be a successful politician, you must play upon it. Sex killer escapes. That's a fairly average newspaper headline at the time of 1 million unemployed. In times of economic crisis, it's much better to talk about the moral disintegration of society rather than the economic one. We've been deprived of our sexual freedom since birth. As a result, we're confused, guilty, and dependent upon the moral guidance of others. We're helpless. We look to a leader to do our thinking for us.
And that's you.
I know what you think. I cut a ridiculous figure with my 700 votes for making a fool of myself on other people's platforms. Bit of a joke in the newspapers. I'm not concerned about that. My time will come. All that concerns me is that my policy should be carried out, no matter who might do it for me.
In other words, a sexually repressed nation is ripe for a dictator, and that's you. Excuse me, sir, if I pause to look at you and savor the funny side of that.
There have been funnier sights in history. I just acquired a new horse. Come with me. The people are continually saying to me, Arthur Valentine, you're a cultured, educated man. You love horses and dogs. You have an appreciation of the arts. You're a man of great sensitivity. And yet you espouse philosophies of racial hatred, sexual inhibition, violence upon the streets. We can't understand you, Arthur Valentine. To which I reply, I did not invent racial hatred. I had nothing to do with the repression of generations of children. The anger in people is what makes them strike out. And that's there whether you or I like it or not.
But you use it in a vain and comical attempt to get a dictator's power.
And why not, Dr. Quist? Why would you deprive me of the freedom to do that which is being done already every day by politicians and journalists and advertisers and businessmen? They make money out of it. They subjugate nations. They suppress minorities. And they do it under the mask of a so-called democratic society. It's their freedom to do it that we vote for. Well, someone else is getting into the act now. If you have created a society in which a naked couple cavorting on a public stage is more shocking than 1 million on the dole, 100,000 homeless, 500,000 dead in Pakistan, don't blame me for taking advantage of it. You okayed it, remember? And if I am more than honest with you about my motives and intentions, because I'm confident, the greater the vacuum you create, the less ridiculous I shall become. Let me show you the house.
I have not put it in my report because I didn't think that was the place for it. But I would like to make it clear to everybody that the increasing violence of certain individuals and organizations that we're reading about daily is an activity from which I dissociate myself entirely. Although my name is being used, I have no contact with these groups. And I do not hold with violence. I must make that clear, otherwise all my efforts towards public decency mean nothing at all.
I, too, dissociate myself.
You can dissociate yourselves till the cows come home, but with great respect, you'll be playing on their team, whether you like it or not.
Thank you. For all your hard work, allow me, as chairman of this subcommittee, to thank you most sincerely. To summarize your collective opinion would be difficult, but I gather that you, Mrs. Cressy, and you, Mr. Garrison, are in favor of a strengthening of the law against obscene publication and a limitation of the media.
Yes.
And that you, Professor Fairbairn, and Mr. Granger, and Dr. Tarrant are against.
Yes.
But it is not clear from your report, Mr. Burns, where you stand on this issue. Could you be more precise?
Well, it's not a question of laws, is it? It's education. I'm against.
This committee recommends by 4-2 that there should be no change in the law.
In March 1933, 17 million people democratically voted Hitler into power. He promised to do their thinking for them. He promised the abolition of democratic discussion of opinion. He promised the abolition of the freedom of the individual and the establishment of the freedom of the nation. The masses agreed to their own subjugation and brought it about actively. 10 years before that, Hitler was a silly little man about whom people made jokes.
I've just given you the analysis, Doctor. You see the result?
Hmm? Oh, yes. No change. No change.